And we're
All
live.
right.
Hey, everybody. We are here with the amazing Samantha Kaaua. Did I say your name right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Kaaua?
Good
Okay.
job.
You have to
Um,
spaces between the vowels.
yes. And we're gonna have a really, really important conversation. I'm so glad that Samantha's here to talk with us because we're gonna talk about how you can reignite your love, heal and improve your relationship even when your partner is not on board.
Hmm.
And this is a super close to our heart kind of conversation because it's where we also start in our work with couples,
Hmm.
right? Like in knowing that it starts here, it starts with you. But we work with couples where both partners are willing to do the work, right? Have decided that they want to do the work. And Samantha has found a formula whereby she gets to work with one member of the couple system and is still creating massive, wonderful, life changing transformations. So before we dive into all of that, which I know that everybody wants is what everybody wants to hear about, Samantha, I would love if you took a moment to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me first and foremost. I'm just so grateful and honored to be a part of this. And so, yes, I'm Samantha Kaaua, born and raised here in Hawaii. I feel like I was born into this work. I come from
Mhm.
a background of divorce, and my family swore I would never get divorced. And then about 7 years ago, found myself on the brink of divorce to my
Mhm.
high school sweetheart, husband, and father of my three kids now. And um, yeah, it's been a journey. I also went to school and got my master's degree in marriage and family therapy, got licensed, became a therapist, and then let go of the license to do this work that I do now worldwide.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Nice. So, what brought you from like working with couples in the field of marriage and family therapy, because
Hmm.
that's where I started out too, and into working with an individual in support of their relationship?
Yeah, I did a lot of amazing work with couples and had so
Mhm.
much fun and love it, and learned that for many couples, they're not ready for it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of situations where the one partner has been threatened to come to therapy, or the marriage or relationship will end, and so they do
Mhm.
show up for roughly 3 months, and then after 3 months, there's a
Mhm.
wall that gets
Right.
hit, and unless, there's the right type of support,
Mhm.
it kind of can get worse. So,
Right.
I've learned that if instead of wasting time by bringing that unwilling spouse into the
Mhm.
work with us, I can just work with the change agent. And because that was also my story, and I know you guys can relate to that as
Yep.
well,
Yep.
um, it was kind of an easy transition into doing the work with one partner, because
Mhm.
that was how I transformed my marriage. And so, yeah, it was just this organic transition.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about like how that works? I mean, because the cultural paradigm, right, is that it takes two.
Yes.
Hmm.
It takes two to change a relationship. And you're coming in and saying, well, actually, we could start with one.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
And the basis of that, and I know you know this, so we're just reiterating this for the people watching, is
mhm,
that we look at systems, right? That's our background. Jenny and
yeah.
I come from marriage and family therapy. We look at everything through the lens of systems. The
Mhm,
most common system that most people know about is ecosystems.
mhm,
So if you take a look at an ecosystem, and there's, different species within the ecosystem, and let's just say one species either evolves or goes extinct, or there's a change in one of the components of the system, by law, by scientific law, by scientific, like, just all this, we know this now, science,
mhm,
that system must and will change. It's
mhm.
inevitable.
Yes.
Or it will come to a natural completion, which is the extinction of the entire ecosystem, which nature does not like.
Mhm.
Nature likes evolution. Nature does not like extinction or the death
Yeah.
of a system. So it will evolve. And a couple is a system, right?
Mhm.
So there's two people in an open system that both parties kind of have input into. When you change one person in that relationship, by scientific law, the system must and will change, or it
Mhm.
will come to a natural completion. More often than not, the system will evolve.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the premise of how this works.
Okay. So, I mean, hopefully that makes sense to everybody listening. It obviously makes sense to me because
Yeah.
that's how we were trained, and Cal's a scientist, and so he gets it
Yeah.
Oh,
too.
Cal,
I
you like
majored in
that part.
biology.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay, so we're speaking your language too.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. But in practical terms, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you help somebody to transform their relationship or to reignite the passion or to get their partner to change or act like they care when their partner doesn't seem to want to?
Yeah.
What does
So
that look like?
first and foremost, both of you and I have a strong emphasis on self transformation.
Mhm.
And that is the quickest way to create change in any relationship. And I always say everything is a relationship. You relate to people, your environment, inanimate objects. Like there's everything you
Your own
relate to.
mind.
Yeah, your own mind, the
Mhm.
parts within yourself.
Mhm.
And the quickest way to create change is to be that change agent. So,
Mhm.
in a relationship with another person, the quickest way to get a changed behavior in them is to find where you are, you're the what's the word I'm looking for? The cycle that you're in and your part in that
Mhm.
cycle that you don't like, and then change that. So changing
Mhm.
yourself can change the relationship. The biggest thing that I find in my clients is a lack of self-trust. So that's actually where we start, is
Mhm.
finding all the ways that you don't trust yourself in this relationship. And it's not about trusting them, it's about trusting yourself with them.
Mm.
And
Can you
that's
say more
really,
about that?
yeah. So my husband and I, the reason why we were on the brink of divorce 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, was because he was hiding an addiction behind my back. Granted, I
Mm.
wasn't the most understanding person at that time when it came to addiction. So, hence why he was hiding it. But,
Sure.
like, when I found out about his addiction for the past 10 years, it was a betrayal of trust.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I felt cheated on. I felt lied to, and just everything broke in that
Mhm.
moment.
Mhm.
And I was like, you have to earn my trust back. You have to do all these things. And until, you do that, I don't know where we stand. I don't know what will happen.
Mhm.
But it was this one moment where I realized, oh, wait a minute. He doesn't need to earn my trust back, or vice versa. I just need to decide if I wanna trust him. Like, I
Yeah.
just need to decide if I trusted myself enough to make a decision in any given moment if he were to
Mm.
do what he did again, if he were to lie to me again, if he were to actually cheat on me with another person, or if he were to whatever, I can fill in the blank with it. Do
Mhm.
I trust myself to see the signs and to
Mhm.
do the next right thing?
Mhm.
And ultimately, the answer was no in that
Mhm.
moment. And when I actually got to a place of yes, it didn't matter how he showed up. I trusted myself. The whole relationship shifted.
Wow.
Yeah. Does that explain what
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
say?
Mhm.
That's huge.
Yeah, it was a
And it
huge thing.
yeah, and I mean, it makes me think of a lot of the clients that we work with, and because this is a different perspective than we've brought to the table.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in terms of the trusting yourself, it definitely like dovetails with ours, but not we've not used that lens. So I'm really appreciating
Mhm.
that perspective in
Mhm.
terms of the security that
Yes.
it creates within ourselves, the
Mhm.
like
Yes.
the grounding, the anchoring within ourselves,
Yes.
where we no longer are um are needing our partner to be any certain way for us to be okay, right? It's that breakaway from codependence, which
Exactly.
we, you know, often is used ironically in like substance abuse
Yeah.
world, but actually shows up in a lot of relationships
Oh, yeah,
where go ahead.
sorry. I literally just posted something this morning that like a letter was written. It was somebody else. So like I remixed the post, and then the post said something along the lines of like, I love how you make me feel safe and loved and secure and all
Mhm.
these things, right? And I
Mhm.
just basically saying like they complete me, right? And I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, that's not just coming from addiction. This is our society
Yes.
who longs for someone to make them feel a certain way,
Yes.
feel safe, meaning that I trust them or they're trustworthy.
Mhm.
And nobody can make you feel anything. And it was like,
Mhm.
wow, the amount of power that's given away in our society through our relationships is just
Mm.
mind blowing.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes. Sing it, girl.
Right?
Oh, it's
So,
so
yeah.
that's it is. It's creates so much pressure on relationships
Yes.
and partners to be a certain way,
Yeah.
right? Like because if you're not, and I don't feel not only safe but beautiful,
Yes.
loved, spoiled, right? Like cherished, good enough,
Yep.
right? Like all the things, then people start to not only like feel bad about themselves, but also feel bad about their partner because their
Yep.
partner is not making them feel the way that they think that a partner should feel. And that's the thing, right? That's the toxic narrative, is that we think that's how it's supposed to be. If we have a good relationship, if we found the
Mhm.
right person,
Yeah.
it should be that way. And
I
if
know, I
it's
saw
not, then
your
it's like,
recent post about that. I was like,
yes.
"Yes." Exactly. Yeah, we have these false expectations that really create and set us up for failure in our marriages, in our
Yeah.
relationships, and
Mhm.
it's just so prevalent in our society that
Mhm.
why wouldn't we expect our partner to be this or be that for us? And
Mhm.
to pull their weight and to make us feel more loved or seen or heard, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, did you know that that's not their job to make you feel heard? Like,
Mhm.
what? Right? It's like, what?
Now wait a second. Wait a second.
Yeah.
How am I going to feel heard if they're not hearing me,
If
Samantha?
they're not listening. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, did you know that there's some other way to do that?
Mhm.
And that really goes back to the trusting yourself, listening to yourself,
Yeah.
loving yourself, all
Yes.
the different parts of self, right?
Yes.
And when we do that, and I always say too, you know, you can leave your relationship whenever you want. You can leave your marriage anytime you want.
Mhm.
And it might actually be easier to leave because then you
Mhm.
can regroup and you don't get triggered 24/7 all of the time. And an alternative would be to stay, let your partner give you these gifts of triggers
Mhm.
and regain your power within your marriage. And then you can choose to leave
Mhm.
if you want to still,
Yes.
or you can watch it evolve and you can make a new decision. But that was the point of power for me in my marriage, was
Mm.
saying I'm not going to leave this marriage until I become a whole person, until I'm
Yes.
sorry, my dog is right behind my desk right now. If you hear noises, that's her. And yeah, and I'm not going to leave until I'm a whole person. And that was like in this chaotic,
Mm.
unstable, really messy marriage.
Mhm.
And if I can do that here, I can do that anywhere, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's another point for all of you listening, and I think for the two of you too. It's like, let's resolve this in this marriage, in this relationship, and you guys can still choose to walk away, but
Mhm.
do it in a way that you feel empowered again. You
Yes.
feel whole. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And it speaks to um like the shift in leaving from a place of like fear and running away,
Yes.
and then wondering if you made the right decision, or being in indecision or regret or coming back, like the yo-yo thing, like Cal
And
and I
even
did
in
for a really
anger,
long time.
right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Right. It's like, oh, this isn't working. We need to break up. And then we leave. And it's like, oh, but
Yeah.
because we're being called to this journey. We're being called to these gifts
Right.
that are leading us into so much personal growth and healing and expansion.
Mhm.
And you're absolutely right, Samantha, that leaving when you get to a place of like recognizing that that's what's in my best interest and that's
Mhm.
like my truth, and you're
Mhm.
in an empowered place around it, there's so much more certainty.
Yeah.
There's so much more love. It's so much less painful. I mean, it's
Yes.
still painful, still hard, but like much less so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So important.
So I know that, or I expect that folks watching this might want to know, like, how do you start to trust yourself more? And I'm sure that's like the whole process, or a big part of the process that you
Sure,
work with
right.
them. But like,
Yeah.
where would they start? Do you have any tips for people about how they start to trust themselves more and thus change the system that is their couple relationship?
Yes. Like if I were to pick the the very beginning, I mean, like you said, it is a whole process, but one thing that they can start doing is just noticing when they're triggered,
Mhm.
noticing what part of themselves is showing up to the conversation. And I use a methodology that I created called Inner Mosaic to help you find this part, right? This
Mhm.
younger part of you that is showing up into these arguments or trigger points or conversations.
Mhm.
And once you're able to identify that, you can even just notice and become aware that, okay, this is not the today me showing up. This is a
Mhm.
younger me. Like, even if
Mhm.
you just simply said, this is a younger me in this situation, it can give you more compassion and empathy and understanding for
Mhm.
why you're showing up that way and why it's so emotionally triggering.
Yeah.
And I think that's step one, is just noticing it.
Mhm.
Noticing, oh, okay, I'm triggered right now.
Mhm.
And you can engage as how you've always engaged, but the
Right.
more and more aware you become,
Mhm.
the quicker the turnaround will be. Oh, here's one thing I can share actually. I have the triple A's of transformation is something I use as
Mm.
well as a model, and it's
Okay.
3 A's. So this is a simple tool that everyone can use. The
Cool.
first A is awareness. So exactly what I just shared. Just
Mhm.
become aware, notice what you're noticing, notice your triggers, your happiness, notice the thoughts that are actually creating the feeling, not the person. Right?
Mhm.
Notice the thoughts.
Mhm.
Then the second A is alignment. Get in alignment with your highest truth, right? The part of you that's in gratitude, that's proud of yourself. Like, recalibrate your energy, breathe, do whatever techniques that you know to help
Mhm.
center yourself again, align.
Mhm.
And then the third is action. So taking action from that aligned space instead of from the triggered place.
Mhm.
And it's just wash, rinse, and repeat.
Yeah.
Awareness, alignment, action. Awareness, alignment, action. So that's a great first tip, I think, for
I love
people.
that. Yeah. Super simple,
Mhm.
easy to remember. I love alliterations.
For
Yes,
sure.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
and
good
that
order.
will begin the process of trust, right? When you can catch yourself, make a conscious decision, and move forward from that, you will begin building that relationship within yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good segue to my question too, around
Sure.
like when people get really good at the triple A's and learn the inner mosaic
Mhm.
model, right? Um, what what happens? Like, what do they receive? Do you have any like examples of the transformation, like the gifts that
Yeah.
come?
Oh, this is a great question because it's absolutely opposite of what people think that they will receive.
Okay.
So I always say, when you get better, your partner's going to get worse. I promise. So what they actually get is more reactive, sometimes combative, just a spouse that's trying to get them back to equilibrium,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mm,
they're going to get good things too. They'll get like increased confidence, increased self-love and awareness and trust and all those things. But as they build that up and they start changing the way they show up in their relationship, the other partner will want to bring them back to homeostasis, which is the norm that they had created over time, which is now not healthy. Right? And so when you get better, they will likely get more symptomatic. It doesn't mean that the relationship is going the wrong direction. This is where most people give up. They're doing personal development, they're getting better, their spouse is getting more symptomatic, and they're like, oh, we're growing apart. And I think it's completely false that can happen. People grow, and everybody's growing. Like, it's not apart or together. It's like we're
just growing.
And your growth looks different than my growth sometimes. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's really the question, like the answer you were seeking, Kel.
No, but
what they're gonna get is
that's a really important answer, because
Yeah.
you're right. I think most people wouldn't expect that. They're like, well, I'm trying to do this work to make things better, and you're telling me it's going to get worse. Why would I
Before
do
it
the
gets
work
better.
anyway?
Yes, exactly. And then that's really most of the coaching that I do. Like, yes, I'll teach you to trust yourself. And I think both of you do the same thing. You're teaching them to trust themselves, love themselves, all of the above. But most of the work that happens, I think, for all of us is literally just holding space and helping you stay in that changed state long enough for the transformation to happen in the relationship or in your partner.
Yes.
Right? And you just hold space with both. For you to hold space for both partners. For me, I hold space for one partner, and then let the magic happen. It's just like the evolution happen.
Yeah. So it gets better, or you get better, and then your partner gets worse. And then if you can hold through that,
yes,
your partner starts to change, because you've created a new equilibrium, like a new way of being, and you've not changed back. And like, y'all, if you're not familiar with the term homeostasis, this is another like biological systems work, right? Like, but this also comes from science, right? This is how systems work. It's like a yang. It's like a thermostat. Like your system is like, oh, it's gotten too hot, we got to turn the air conditioning on. I've got to bring it back to what it was set at. Your set point is the conflict, is the disconnection, is the unhappiness, is the way of talking to one another, not listening to one another that you're used to. And this isn't a conscious thing that we do, but we still do it because our nervous systems, no one's nervous system likes change.
Well, yeah, and our brains are really just meant to be working efficiently, and so they work on patterns, on repetition, and on habit. And so, kind of like we often talk about it in the context of like the dance moves. So if like you've been doing this dance for so long, and then somebody starts doing another dance, you're stepping on each other's toes.
Like, what are you doing? Why are you dancing like that?
Yeah, it's gonna hurt. Like if you change the dance, and I'm just still doing the old dance, we're stomping on each other's toes until I learn the new dance. You know? So
and you increase the beat and the music
tempo.
Faster. Like, what's happening?
I don't know how to do this dance. Go back, change it back.
Slow down. Yes. Yeah, I love that analogy. Analogy that one that I use is boiling water. So say you're trying to boil a pot of water, and every time you it gets a little bumpy, you turn off the heat and you go back. You're like, oh, it's gonna boil, I'll turn off the heat. And every time you're turning off the heat, you're going back to the old patterns. You're going back to the old ways that you operated in, right, with your partner. The goal is to keep the heat on, because if you don't, every time you turn off the stove, the water will settle back down and go back to where it was. It needs to stay on long enough to create a phase change, to hit that boiling point, to create steam. And so each time your partner comes in and makes some noise, and you turn off the heat and you go meet them where they're at and engage in another argument, that's you turning off the heat of the stove. And so it's like, don't engage. Stay the course, and then you will have this phase change. You will have the boiling water, right?
That's another beautiful metaphor. I love that. Yes. So good. So really speaking to like people's power to change their relationship, to and I love that, like, you're helping people see that what the path can look like so that they're prepared, because I think that is so important when you can look ahead and see like, okay, this is going to start with learning how to trust myself and be
Yeah.
okay with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to move into like doing things different from my partner, from like an aligned, conscious
Yes.
action place. And then it's probably going to hit some bumps in the
Get bumpy.
road. And
Yep.
my job is going to be to like stay with it, hold
Mhm.
space, not engage in those old patterns, and trust the process.
Yes.
Lean on my mentor, lean on my support system while we're boiling.
Mhm.
And eventually, like, we are going to learn this new dance. We are going to change phases and be in a whole new like system, a whole new normal with one another.
Yeah.
And you're pulling that system, you're pulling your partner into change because of the way that you're being different yourself.
Yes.
And that's like, and you're right, it is inevitable. It works like clockwork. If you
It
do
does.
it and you stay with it, it will
It's the
work.
commitment. Yeah, you're just ready if you're willing to stay with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're doing it, I'll add, from like a conscious and aware and effective approach, because because what I also hear people talking about is, well, I have been working on the relationship. I have been working on myself.
Right.
Like I'm putting in so much effort,
Yeah.
Yes.
and my partner's doing nothing and nothing's getting better.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to clients or potential clients who are coming from this experience of like, I'm already exhausted from being the only one putting in so much work in the relationship?
Yeah, it's a common thing. It's so common that people are coming very burnt out, very exhausted.
Mhm.
But what they don't realize is that they are putting work in their relationship, like they perceive to be putting work into it, but
Mhm.
they're still constantly triggered. They're still emotionally reactive. They're still allowing their partner to make them feel a certain way.
Mhm.
So the work that they're doing is great,
Mhm.
but there's a reason why it's not working in their relationship, is
Mhm.
because it's the work they're doing on the outside of the relationship that
Mhm.
feels heavy, and they're just doing a lot out here, but they're
Mhm.
not translating it to inside of the relationship. So if they did that personal development work in the relationship and said, okay, I'm going to feel empowered despite what you're saying and doing to me right now,
Mhm.
then it would create that momentum and that movement. But most people who come to me do it out here. And then when they get here, they're like, but he or she is still doing this. And they're talking to me like that. And they're criticizing me and they're mean.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was like, okay, and you're still the victim.
Mhm.
So when you're still the victim in here, this stuff won't even actually work yet. It won't do anything yet.
Mhm.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does.
Mhm.
It does. And it cut like, for some reason, even though I'm totally on your side on this, Samantha, I'm hearing the devil's advocate, right? Like
Yeah.
the defensiveness from like just the dominant opinions
Yeah.
about, of right, like, okay, so I trust myself, but I'm supposed to just put up with my partner like yelling at me or criticizing me,
No.
right? And
Absolutely.
like, and so there's that piece too. What do you do if you're trying to do your own work, but you have a partner who is lashing out at you, or not being respectful of you, or not honoring your boundaries, or not telling you the truth on things,
Yeah.
right?
I think
I'm make complicating it for you,
no,
in
you're
large
not,
part because
because
I want
that's
to know how
exactly where I
someone else
was.
would answer.
No, that's exactly where I was, right? It's like
Mhm.
I one was that woman who was always working on herself and was
Mhm.
like, this personal development crap does not work in marriages. Like I was that person. But in like okay, so one is you can trust yourself. The reason why I'm saying out here versus in here, you
Mhm.
can trust yourself as an individual being. But
Mhm.
what you're doing is, are you trusting yourself to set the healthy boundary, to hold the healthy boundary,
Yes.
to tell them to stop treating you that way,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
It's not trust yourself and be a doormat.
Mhm.
And like, let's make a disclaimer here. We're not talking about those in an abusive relationship.
Right.
If you are in one, get the right help and then get out.
Yes.
Mhm.
But we are talking about relationships that are, we can work through that, and maybe
Mhm.
there's some mutual with toxicity, but we're not in a very abusive relationship. So in that sense, yeah, it's like, okay, well, what boundary do I want to set? Am I setting it? Am I
Yeah.
trusting myself to speak up at an appropriate time? Am I trusting
Mhm.
myself to say what is on my mind and not take responsibility for their feelings? I hear that all the time. They're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I don't wanna tell him how I feel because he might get hurt." I'm like, "Okay, well, his hurt is on him if he
Mhm.
wants to feel hurt,
Mhm.
if as long as you're coming from this loving place, like, you're not
Right.
actually trying to hurt
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
hurt them, right?"
Very
And
much
Mhm.
so.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's the boundaries need to be set by us, and if they're continuing to disrespect our boundaries, what are we doing
Mhm.
to put a stop to that? What are we doing? Do we need space? My
Mhm.
husband and I actually, like, separated for some time, right? Like,
Mhm.
you move out. Like,
Mhm.
give me space. You can't respect my boundaries here, you can go do that somewhere else. Like, there's a lot of different ways that we can get the support we need to
Mhm.
hold healthy boundaries, and that's probably the one of the harder things to do,
Yes.
right? And that's why we get that feedback or that comment so often, but he
Mhm.
still does, "Oh, but she's still this and
Mhm.
says that." I have a client that his wife threw all his stuff out of the house. He's like, "What do I do every time we fight and she's throwing my stuff out of the house?" I'm like, "Well, a conversation needs to be had
Yeah.
and an agreement needs to be made, and in that agreement, depending what it is, you need to hold it." Like,
Mhm.
that's part of, even if you were raising a child, if you have a consequence in
Right.
place, the only way to teach that child that that's not gonna work is if you hold to your consequence, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's absolutely the place people get stuck because you're right, it's so hard to do. It's so
that's
hard
why
to
we need the support. Even I needed
Yes.
outside help. Like, my therapist, when I was going through the thick of this, was like, "So you're threatening your husband." And I was like, "What? No, I'm setting a healthy boundary." Like, I couldn't even see the difference between a threat and a healthy boundary.
Uh-huh.
And there's a fine line
Yeah.
between threatening your spouse and actually setting something healthy.
Mhm.
So, I had to be called out multiple times.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, the support and mentorship,
We all need support.
yeah, especially from
Can't do anything
people
alone.
who have been through it, right?
Yes.
Like who have lived it. And that's a really important difference, I think. When you're out there looking for support, are you looking for someone who's just been trained in it or someone who also has lived through it? Because I know that there's a lot of therapists out there who are good and a lot of therapists out there who are not so great. And I
Mhm.
knew all my therapist training, even through my PhD, was not enough to and I
Yeah.
was helping other couples. It was not enough to help me get through this relationship
Yes.
successfully with Cal. I had to stumble through that and
Yeah.
and
Yes.
and have a really hard time.
Stumble we did.
Yeah, marriage therapy failed for me and my husband. Like,
Yeah.
so, and we were like, I was like, "What does this mean?" Like,
With my identity.
like, I don't know now, right? Like, "I'm a marriage therapist. Marriage therapy failed for us. Now what?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, it's important to look for the right support, and I always encourage them to look for someone who understands systems.
Yeah.
Whether and I do agree with you that having personal experience is probably the best.
Mhm.
And secondary to that is having someone who understands things in relation to others, because you can
Right.
go to an individual therapist and they can be a great fit and a great person, and they can still steer you out of your relationship.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it's just being mindful of how to apply this personal development inside of your relationship or
Mhm.
marriage in order to create the change. Otherwise, you will feel defeated and burnt out and
Mhm.
exhausted from all the effort you're putting in, because it's
Mhm.
not translating correctly in
Mhm.
here, in the marriage, in the
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for people who are like, okay, but I want to know more about Samantha and how I can work
Yeah.
with her because she clearly has the training and gets it. How do people work with you? What ways can they work with you? How do they get more
Yeah.
from
What
you?
do you have going on?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I call myself a marriage mind shift coach because
Mm,
I'm here to help people change their mindsets about marriage in order to create the change that they want to see. And
love it.
so I work with individuals who have partners that are unwilling. If you have a willing partner, see Cal and Jenny. If you don't have a willing partner, come see me. And yeah, we can talk about different ways to work together. I normally work with my clients over 3 to 6 months.
Mhm.
And that begins the transformation, and they start to see change in their partner. And after that, it's kind of maintenance, right? Where we have to hold steady and maintain the new grooves that you're in.
Yes.
Otherwise, you will fall back into the old ways and the old patterns over time. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and they can, if they want to check out my website, that's probably the most central place
Mhm.
to go, is thegems.com. That's TheGems.com. And then can I just share what it stands for?
Yes, please.
Because most people are like, why do you spell gems with two M's? It actually stands for the gift of each meaningful moment shared.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's
So that's
beautiful.
a great way for us to connect.
Awesome.
Love it.
And you have a book out now too that people could check out.
Oh, thanks. Yes, it's called Finding Beauty in Your Broken Pieces: The Art and Science of Transforming Any Relationship.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
good.
you. Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. I mean, it's also listed on my website, but you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, almost any major outlet for books.
Awesome. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much,
thank you.
Samantha, for this conversation. I know we kept you a little bit long, but there's
Oh,
just
it's
so
okay.
many great questions coming up for me
Yeah.
in thinking about how can we help people really see that this does work and that their objections and that the struggles that they've been having trying to do this, trying
Yeah.
to work on themselves, trying to work on their relationship, there's a reason that it hasn't been working. It
Yes,
doesn't mean that it can't work.
Mhm.
exactly. And there's help
Mhm.
out there that can support you in translating that.
Yes. Yes. So for all of you out there who like want to stop putting in so much energy and spinning your wheels and
Yeah.
wanted to actually start making like movement in your relationship, get in touch with Samantha. She is so amazing. You're not going to regret it. And thank you for joining us for
Yes.
our final expert series.
April went quick.
Yes,
It did.
we did.
Thank you. It's been an honor and pleasure, and I love the work that you both are doing in the world as well.
Oh, same Samantha. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.